Samantha Blake had always believed in second chances. At 33, she had been through her share of heartbreak. But nothing shook her like the collapse of her 3-year relationship with Adam. They were engaged once, almost bought a house together. But then, in a slow, quiet unraveling, things just fell apart. Now, a year later, she was dating someone new, a man named Carter. He was calm, thoughtful, and dependable. The kind of man who didn't raise his voice, didn't disappear for days, didn't leave her guessing. They had been together for about 8 months. Things weren't perfect, but they were steady, maybe even safe still. Every now and then, Samantha thought about Adam, not in a way that meant she still loved him, but in that strange, aching way you remember someone who once felt like your entire future. The invitation came out of nowhere. "Let's have dinner with Adam," Carter said one evening. Casually, like he was asking her to try a new restaurant, Samantha looked up from her tea, confused. "What?" "He reached out," Carter said, setting his phone down. "Said he wanted to clear the air. Apparently, he's been thinking about the past." Samantha hesitated. "And you're okay with that?" "I'm not worried," Carter said with a small smile. "Are you?" She wasn't sure what to say. The idea of sitting at a table with her ex, across from her current boyfriend, felt strange, uncomfortable even. But Carter seemed calm, unbothered, so she agreed. The night of the dinner, she wore a soft black dress, simple gold earrings, and just enough perfume to remind herself she still wanted to feel beautiful. She told herself it wasn't about Adam. She just wanted to feel in control. The restaurant was small, tucked into a quiet street in downtown Chicago. Warm lighting, exposed brick, white tablecloths. The kind of place she used to dream of going to with someone she could grow old with. Adam was already there when they arrived. He stood when he saw her, still handsome in that rugged, effortless way, sleeves rolled up, a hint of that familiar cologne. Eyes that still knew how to read her. "Hey, Sam," he said. She flinched a little at the sound of her old name. Carter noticed, but said nothing. They sat. The first few minutes were stiff. Adam asked about her work. She mentioned Carter's recent promotion. Small talk, the kind that kept old wounds from reopening too quickly. But something shifted as the wine flowed. Carter was ... quiet, watching more than speaking. Almost like he was studying them. Adam, on the other hand, had a way of pulling the conversation back to old memories. "Remember that trip to Michigan?" he said, smiling. "We got lost for hours and ended up at that tiny diner." Samantha laughed, surprised by how clear that memory still was. "You ordered pancakes at 3 p.m. She said, "You cried that night," Adam added softly. "Said it felt like the first time you could breathe in weeks." The table went silent. Carter finally spoke. "You two had a real connection." Wasn't a question. It was a statement. Direct.com. Samantha shifted in her seat, unsure what to say. "I'm not jealous," Carter added, "but I think we should be honest with ourselves." Adam looked at her. "I didn't handle things right. I let us fall apart when I should have fought for you." Samantha looked down. Her heart was beating faster now. Not out of love, out of confusion, memory, longing for something that was already gone but still unfinished. "I didn't come here to restart anything," Adam said. "I just needed to say it out loud." Carter leaned forward. "Actually, I brought you both here for a reason." Samantha froze. "What do you mean?" she asked. Carter's expression was calm to calm. "I've seen the way you talk about him, the way you change when his name comes up. I wanted to see it for myself." She felt heat rising in her chest. "You think I still have feelings for him? I think you haven't let yourself answer that question honestly." Adam sat back, quiet now. Watching her, waiting, Samantha looked between them. The two men who had known her most intimately, emotionally. Not physically. Both waiting for her to reveal something she hadn't admitted even to herself. "I loved him," she said finally, voice low. "But it broke me when it ended. And I wasn't ready to start again. With anyone. Not even you, Carter." Carter nodded. "I know." Adam spoke gently. "Then why did you..." Because I didn't want to feel empty anymore. The words surprised even her, but they were true. Carter leaned back, a trace of sadness in his eyes. You've been with me, ... But you've been somewhere else the whole time? Samantha didn't deny it. The server returned to take orders, but the mood had shifted. They each mumbled their choices, but no one was really hungry anymore. The table had become something else, a place where past and present met with no clear future in sight. Carter broke the silence again. I don't think I'm the man who can bring you peace. I thought maybe I could be, but peace doesn't come from pretending. Samantha looked at him, her heart aching. So what now? I think we sit with the truth, he said. You still have feelings. Maybe not love, but something unresolved. Adam added, and I still regret what I lost. The candles on the table flickered. The music in the background seemed distant now, like it belonged to another story happening across the room. Samantha felt like she was standing at a crossroads without moving. This dinner was supposed to be a simple evening, a gesture, a chance to clear the air. Instead, it had opened a door she thought was sealed shut. She looked at Carter, stable, strong and honest enough to bring her here. She looked at Adam, familiar, flawed, and still holding the pieces of something they once built together. And she looked inside herself, wondering what it meant to be clipped between two chapters of her life, one unfinished, one perhaps never fully started. The night wasn't over, but the person she was at the beginning of the evening was already gone. The ride home from the restaurant was quiet. Samantha sat in the passenger seat, hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out at the passing city lights. Carter drove slowly, almost too carefully, as if even the car didn't know how to move forward after that dinner. No music played. No one spoke. When they reached her apartment, he parked the car and turned off the engine but didn't get out. She waited, hoping he would say something. He didn't, so she did. I didn't know it would feel like that, she said softly. Carter finally looked at her. Like what? Like I was being torn in two. He nodded, his face unreadable. I know. She opened the door and stepped out. Before closing it, she hesitated. Are you coming in? Carter didn't answer right away. Then, no, not tonight. Samantha stood there as he pulled away, the sound of the engine growing distant. She turned, walked up the stairs, and let herself inside. The apartment felt colder than usual. Or maybe it was just her. She set her keys down, kicked off her heels, and sank into the couch. Everything in her head was loud. Adam's voice, Carter's calm sadness, the look on both their faces when she couldn't give them a clear answer. She didn't sleep that night by morning. She had 3 unread messages. Carter, I hope you got some rest. Carter, I meant what I said. I want you to be honest with yourself. Adam, can we talk? It's just us. She stared at the last one the longest. After a long shower and 2 cups of coffee, she replied, Samantha, okay. They met later that afternoon at a park near the river. It was cloudy, the wind picking up leaves and memories all around them. Adam was already there, sitting on a bench, coat buttoned up, hands in his pockets. He stood when she approached. Hey, hi. They sat. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, he said, I didn't expect that dinner to go the way it did. Neither did I. I meant what I said, Adam continued. I regret losing you. I regret not fighting harder. Samantha looked at the river, at the soft gray water rolling endlessly. And now? I don't know, he said honestly. I thought I wanted closure. But seeing you, being near you again, it made me remember what we had. The good parts? We had bad parts too, I know. But those weren't all your fault, Sam. She blinked. That's the first time you've said that. I've had time to grow up, he said. And I see now that I let you carry more than your share. The wind moved through the trees, quiet and steady. Samantha finally said, I'm with Carter. Adam nodded. I know. And he brought us together because he sees what's still between us. Do you? She didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. All she had were pieces. Adam turned toward her. I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm just asking you to ask yourself, are you with him because you love him? Or because he made things easier after us? That question landed hard. Samantha stood up. I need time. I'm not going anywhere, Adam said. That night, back at her apartment, she didn't text either of them. She lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, and sat with her thoughts. The truth was messy. Her heart didn't have straight lines. There was comfort in Carter, steady, safe, good. But there was still a pulse between her and Adam. Something unresolved. Something quietly burning. She pulled out a journal and wrote 3 names at the top of a blank page. Adam, Carter. Then she started writing beneath each one, not to choose between them, just to understand. Under Adam, she wrote history, chemistry, regret. What if under Carter, stability, kindness, respect? Peace. Under me, confused, tired, afraid. Ready? The last word surprised her. Ready? Ready for what? The truth? The hurt? The next chapter. The next morning she called Carter. I need to see you, she said. They met at his place in the living room that once felt like a second home. He poured her tea like he always did, still gentle, still thoughtful. She sat on the edge of the couch. You didn't deserve that dinner. I asked for it, he reminded her. I know. But you didn't deserve to watch me look like that. Carter looked at her carefully. Do you love him? I don't know, she said honestly. I know I haven't let go. He nodded, taking that in, and me. He asked, do you love me? She hesitated. I love the way you care for me. I love the life we've built. But if I'm being truly honest, something's missing. Something I haven't wanted to admit. Carter's face didn't show anger, just quiet disappointment. You wanted me to be a safe place. I still do. But I can't be second choice. Samantha's eyes filled with tears. You're not. You're just not the end of my story. He took her hand one last time. Then go write the rest of it. But don't run back to the past just because it's familiar. Make sure it's love, not memory. She left quietly, both of them knowing this was goodbye. Outside, the wind had picked up. She pulled her coat tighter, walking with no destination in mind. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Adam, thinking of you. She didn't reply. Instead, she walked to the river. The same bench. The same gray sky. And she sat there alone, not because she had no one, but because she needed to sit with herself without noise, without pressure, without anyone waiting for her to decide. This wasn't about Adam or Carter anymore. It was about her, and for the first time in a long time, she wanted to choose herself not to be loved, but to feel whole. The next chapter wasn't about romance. It was about healing, but love. It might find her again, on a quiet bench, in a warm kitchen, or maybe even in the space she left behind. This story remains fully compliant with YouTube monetization policies. No explicit scenes, no violence, no harmful or misleading claims. It is written in clear, emotional, mature language using simple English for a wide audience. It wraps up the journey with a heartfelt, reflective, and clean resolution, staying aligned with your storytelling channel's tone. Samantha didn't expect her life to change in 1 month, but it had. What started as a quiet dinner between 3 people had turned her world upside down. She had walked away from Carter, not out of anger or betrayal, but out of honesty. She needed space to breathe, to figure out who she really was without anyone else shaping her days. She spent the next few weeks alone. No men, no dating, no pressure, just work, long walks, old music, and journaling. She rearranged her apartment, cleared out the closet, and deleted pictures that no longer made her feel anything. It wasn't about cutting people out. It was about making room inside and out. Adam texted a few times. Simple things, thinking of you. Hope you're okay? No pressure, just here if you need. She never ignored him, but she didn't always reply either. Sometimes silence was more honest than words. One Saturday morning, she stood in her kitchen, sunlight pouring in, coffee in her hands, and realized she hadn't cried in a while. Not even once that week. Not about Carter. Not about Adam. Not even about the version of herself that used to feel lost in everyone else's choices. That was progress. But healing wasn't a straight line. Some nights were harder. The quiet would feel too loud. Memories would sneak in. The way Carter used to smile when she laughed at his terrible jokes. The way Adam's hand fit perfectly into hers during road trips. The way she felt torn between the comfort of one and the chaos of the other. She didn't regret the dinner anymore. It had exposed everything. It had given her truth, even if it hurt. Midweek, she got a letter in the mail. It was from Carter. The envelope was thin, the handwriting neat. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Sam, I hope you're well. No pressure to respond. I just wanted to thank you for being honest. For not settling. It took courage to walk away. You deserve to feel fully chosen, and not just by someone else, but by yourself first. I'm okay, really. I've been spending time with my family, reading more, and even picked up photography again. Funny how much of yourself you lose when you're quietly holding on to someone who isn't really there. No hard feelings, just peace." Carter, she held the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. It felt like closure. Gentle, clean, kind. Not all endings had to be loud. She thought of texting him back, but decided not to. Some chapters didn't need more words, just gratitude. Later that evening, Adam called. She almost let it ring out, but something in her heart whispered, "Pick up." "Hey," she answered. "Hi," he said, soft and steady. "Did I catch you at a bad time?" "No," she said, walking over to the window. "Just here. Here is a good place," he said. "Glad you're here." There was a pause. "I miss you," he added gently. She leaned against the frame. "I know. I've been thinking about us," Adam continued. "But I want to be clear. I don't want the past version of us. I want something new. There's even a chance." Samantha didn't speak right away. She felt the warmth in his voice, the patience. It wasn't the same Adam she used to know, the one who would pull away when things got hard. This version was different. He sounded steady. "I'm not ready to jump back into something," she said honestly. "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I just want to start where we are, to people who still care. With no expectations." That night, they talked for over 2 hours about everything. Childhood memories, regrets, dreams they had forgotten about. It wasn't romantic. It was real. At the end, he said, "Let's meet. No pressure, just as two people who once loved each other." Samantha agreed. They met at a small cafe by the lake. Fall had started to settle in. Crisp air and golden leaves everywhere. He was already seated when she arrived, hands wrapped around a warm cup. "You look at peace," he said as she sat. "I've been working on that." They talked for a while, slower, more thoughtful. There were no hidden hopes, no tension. It's two people reconnecting through calm. At one point, Adam said something she didn't expect. "I used to love you for how you made me feel. Now I think I just love who you are, even if I'm not part of your story." Tears welled in her eyes. Not because it was sad, but because it was the most freeing thing he could have said. She smiled, touched his hand briefly, and whispered, "Thank you." From that day on, things changed. Not in a dramatic way, but slowly. They saw each other sometimes, walked the lake path, shared quiet dinners. No labels, no plans, just presence. Weeks turned into months. Samantha started writing again. She published a personal essay in a local magazine titled "Choosing the Quiet." It was about letting go, about choosing stillness over noise, clarity over confusion. Adam read it and sent her a message. "It's beautiful. You're becoming who you were always meant to be." One chilly evening, they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. He handed her a scarf, soft, gray, the kind that felt like a hug. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded. "If I hadn't been your ex, do you think we would have fallen in love right now, as we are?" She smiled, looking at the water. "Maybe, but maybe that wasn't the point." "What was?" "Maybe we were meant to break and find each other again." Not to start over, but to start right. Adam looked at her with a softness she hadn't seen in years. So what now? She reached for his hand. Now, we just keep walking, one moment at a time. There were no promises, no big confessions, just peace. And sometimes peace was the most romantic ending of all. Noah sat in the dim light of his living room, staring at the clock. It was almost 7 in the evening, but the ticking sound felt louder than it ever had. His chest felt heavy, and his mind refused to quiet down. He'd been waiting for this moment all day, though he didn't know if he was ready. For what would happen when the door finally opened? The air in the room was tense, still, almost alive. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, it suffocates. His wife, Emily, wasn't home yet. She was supposed to be back hours ago. Lately, she had been coming home late, always with a new excuse. Meetings, gallery events, just catching up with the team. At first, Noah believed her. But over time, her stories began to sound practiced, like lines rehearsed too many times. He didn't want to doubt her. He loved her too much to let suspicion destroy what they had. But when love turns quiet, even the smallest signs start to scream. Emily had always been the warm one in their marriage. She had a spark, a kind of energy that drew people in. Noah admired it. She saw beauty where others saw nothing. That's why when she got a new job at a small art gallery downtown, he was happy for her. She needed something of her own, something to reignite her passion. But what started as excitement soon became distance. The man she worked for, Daniel, was older, confident, and effortlessly charming. He had that smooth, composed kind of energy that made everyone listen when he spoke. Emily mentioned him often in the beginning, little details, stories from the office. But over time, she stopped talking about him altogether. That's when Noah knew something had changed. He tried to push the thought away. He didn't want to be the jealous husband who overthought everything. But when love begins to hurt, denial doesn't silence the truth, it only delays it. So when Daniel called that afternoon, asking if he could come by to talk, Noah agreed. His voice sounded calm, but inside he felt a storm now. Sitting there in that still room, he wondered what kind of conversation was about to take place between two men who already knew the truth. When the doorbell finally rang, the sound was sharp and final, like the closing of a chapter. Noah rose slowly and opened the door. Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes steady but uncertain. He looked composed, but there was guilt in the lines of his face. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Two men, one room. No words, just tension. "Thanks for letting me come," Daniel said quietly. Noah nodded and stepped aside. Daniel entered, his movements careful, respectful, almost rehearsed. He looked around the living room, taking in the framed photos on the wall. One of Noah and Emily at their wedding, another of them at the lake last summer, smiling like nothing could touch them. The sight made Daniel's throat tighten. They stood there in silence for a while. The air felt thick, like it could break. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I think you already know why I'm here." Noah didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. Daniel's voice softened. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to cross that line. But I did, and I think you deserve to hear it from me, not from her." Noah stared at him. His hands were clenched, but his voice was calm. "I already knew," he said. "I just wanted to see if you'd have the courage to say it." Daniel's eyes lowered. "She didn't tell me you knew." "She didn't have to," Noah replied. "When someone you love changes, you can feel it long before they say a word." The silence that followed was heavier than before. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room again, counting down the seconds of a life that would never be the same. Noah walked to the table and picked up a photo, Emily laughing at the beach, her hair blowing across her face. He traced his thumb across the glass. "She used to laugh like that with me," he said quietly. "Now she barely looks at me." Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I never meant to take that from you." Noah looked up at him, his expression a mix of pain and disbelief. "You didn't just take something from me," he said. "You took something from her too. You turned her confusion into guilt. You made her forget what we built." Daniel didn't argue. He didn't try to explain. There was nothing he could say that would undo what was done. He simply stood there, shoulders low, eyes full of regret. Then came the sound of keys at the door. The air in the room froze. Emily's voice came from the hallway, soft and unaware. "Noah, you're home early." Her words faded as she stepped into the living room and saw them, her husband and her boss, standing across from each other in perfect silence. Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. Neither man spoke. She looked at Noah first. His expression was calm, but his eyes told a story she didn't want to read. Then she turned to Daniel, the man who looked both guilty and broken at once. The realization hit her all at once. The truth was no longer hiding in shadows. It was standing in her living room, staring back at her. "Noah," she whispered, "please, let me explain." He shook his head slowly. "Don't," he said. "Not yet." The silence that followed was louder than any argument. The kind of silence that comes only when everything you've built starts to collapse. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said. "You have to believe me." "I don't know what to believe anymore," Noah replied. His voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. The calmness in it hurt more than anger ever could. Daniel stepped forward, his tone low but steady. "Emily," he said, "maybe I should go." But Noah's voice stopped him. "No, stay." Both of them froze. "I want to hear the truth," Noah said. "All of it, from both of you." The three of them stood in that small living room, a triangle of broken trust, guilt, and silence. Emily wiped her tears and nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "You deserve that much." And so the truth began to unfold. Piece by piece, every hidden glance, every lie told in the name of love, every moment of weakness was laid bare. Emily spoke with trembling honesty. Daniel didn't defend himself. He listened, shoulders heavy with regret. For Noah, every word felt like a knife, but also a strange relief. Because even though the truth hurt, it was better than the lies that had been strangling him for months. When Emily finally stopped talking, there were tears on all three faces. No shouting, no hatred. Just quiet devastation. The clock struck 9. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. But inside that small apartment, everything had. Noah finally spoke, his voice hoarse but steady. "You both made choices that destroyed something good. But I'm not going to let this moment destroy me too." Daniel nodded. "I understand." He picked up his coat and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to Noah. "For what it's worth," he said, "she still loves you." Noah didn't reply. He just stared at the door as it closed behind Daniel. When the silence returned, it was only Noah and Emily left. Two people bound by love, yet separated by truth. She stepped closer, her face pale and wet with tears. "Can we fix this?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know," he said softly. "But tonight, I just want to breathe." Emily nodded, and for the first time in a long while, neither tried to fill the silence. They just stood there, broken, quiet, and painfully human. Outside, rain began to fall, washing against the window like the world itself was grieving. Inside, the last traces of warmth faded into the kind of silence that changes everything. That night, Noah finally understood sometimes it's not the words that hurt the most. It's the silence that comes after them. The next morning, sunlight crept through the half-closed blinds, painting soft lines across the living room where everything had fallen apart the night before. The air still carried the memory of that conversation, the words that had broken a marriage built on years of trust. Noah sat alone on the couch, his eyes fixed on nothing, his mind trapped between disbelief and exhaustion. The world outside was calm, but inside him, everything was chaos. He hadn't slept. Emily had cried herself to sleep in the bedroom, the same room they once filled with laughter and plans for the future. Now it felt like a place for strangers. Noah's hands shook slightly as he held a cup of coffee, staring at the steam rising like ghosts from the past. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator seemed too loud in the stillness. When Emily finally walked into the room, she looked smaller somehow. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale, her voice fragile. "Can we talk?" she asked. Noah didn't answer right away. He just gestured for her to sit, though he couldn't look at her. The silence stretched until it hurt. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." He let out a quiet breath. "You've already said that?" he said softly. "Last night? I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I didn't mean it enough then." He looked up, his eyes tired but steady. "Why him? Emily. Why someone you knew I'd meet? Someone you'd bring into our life?" Her lips quivered. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I wish I did. I didn't plan for it. It just happened." He shook his head slowly. "Things like this don't just happen. You have to open a door first." She didn't argue. Instead, she looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring as if it suddenly didn't fit anymore. "I was lonely," she said finally. "Not because of you. Because of me. I stopped feeling like myself. Daniel made me feel seen again." Her words hit him hard. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Somewhere between their routines and responsibilities. They had lost the small pieces of connection that made love feel alive. Noah sighed. "You could have told me that," he said. "You didn't have to find comfort in someone else." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I should have. But every time I looked at you, I saw disappointment in myself. You were always patient, kind, stable, and I started feeling like I wasn't enough." He wanted to be angry. He wanted to yell, to accuse, to ask 100 questions that would never change the answer. But all he could feel was a deep, quiet sadness. "What do you want from me now?" he asked finally. "I don't know," she said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know the truth. All of it." He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Then tell me." And so she did. She told him about the late nights at the gallery. The long talks that started as harmless conversations about art and turned into something deeper. Something that felt dangerous but exciting. She told him how she tried to stop it but couldn't. How guilt ate at her even as she smiled at him over dinner. Pretending everything was fine. Every word cut him open, but Noah didn't interrupt. He listened. That was all he could do now. Listen to the sound of the life he once knew, falling apart piece by piece. When she finished, the silence between them was heavy. She wiped her tears and whispered, "That's everything." He nodded slowly. "Thank you for being honest," he said. "Even if it's too late." Emily reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Don't," he said softly. "Not yet." She nodded, her tears falling silently. "I'll give you space." He didn't stop her when she walked out the door. The sound of it closing behind her echoed like an ending. Hours later, Noah found himself driving without a destination. The city passed by in blurs of gray and gold, but he barely noticed. He parked near the lake, the place where he and Emily had spent countless summers, skipping stones and making promises they thought would last forever. The water was calm, but his reflection wasn't. He barely recognized the man staring back at him. He remembered the day he proposed to her, the way she had cried, the way she said she couldn't imagine her life without him. He remembered their first apartment, how they'd built everything from scratch. They'd been broke but happy, hopeful but grounded. And now, years later, all of that felt like a story that belonged to someone else. That night, when he returned home, Emily was sitting on the couch, her eyes red but calm. "I called Daniel," she said quietly. "I told him I can't see him again. It's over." Noah nodded, though his heart felt numb. "That doesn't fix what happened." "I know," she said, "but I had to start somewhere." He studied her for a moment. There was no defensiveness in her voice anymore, only sorrow. "He came here last night," Noah said. "He told me himself." Emily looked down. "He told me he—" "What?" "He said you deserved to know." "He was right," Noah said simply. The room fell silent again. It wasn't the same tense silence as before. This one was softer, sadder, like the sound of something breaking quietly, without drama. Finally, Emily asked, "Do you still love me?" He hesitated, then spoke honestly. "I don't know. I want to. But I don't know how to love someone who broke me like this." Tears filled her eyes again. "Then I'll wait," she said, "even if it takes years." Noah shook his head gently. "Don't wait for me, Emily. Wait for yourself. You need to learn how to forgive yourself before anyone else can." She wiped her cheeks, nodding through her tears. "You're a good man, Noah. Better than I deserve." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe, but even good men get tired. That night, they slept in separate rooms. The sound of the rain tapping against the windows filled the emptiness between them. Noah lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their life together. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet mornings. The first "I love you." It was strange how something so strong could disappear so quietly, like a candle running out of air. In the middle of the night, he heard soft footsteps. The door creaked open. Emily stood there, hesitant. "Can I just sit here?" she asked. He didn't answer, but she took his silence as permission and sat at the edge of the bed. They didn't touch. They didn't speak. They just sat there, two broken souls trying to find warmth in the memory of what used to be after a while. She whispered, "I know you'll never see me the same way again." He turned his head, meeting her eyes in the dim light. "Maybe not," he said, "but I'll try to remember the parts that were real." She nodded, tears glistening. "That's all I can ask." By morning, she was gone. She left a note on the kitchen table, a simple apology written in shaky handwriting. No promises, no excuses. Just 3 words. "I am sorry." Noah stood there reading it over and over until the ink began to blur. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just breathed deeply, quietly, painfully. Because sometimes the most powerful reaction is no reaction at all. That evening, Noah went for a walk through the city. People hurried past him, laughing, living, unaware of the story he carried inside him. He realized then that heartbreak doesn't make the world stop. It only makes you see it differently. Every couple holding hands reminded him of what he'd lost, but also, strangely, of what he still believed in, that love, even when it fails, teaches you who you are. When he returned home, the house was empty. The silence was back, but this time it didn't feel suffocating. It felt clean, like the quiet after a storm. He sat by the window, watching the streetlights glow against the night sky, and whispered to himself, "It's over." For the first time in weeks, he meant it. Months had passed since that night, the night when silence said more than words ever could. Noah's life had slowly reshaped itself into something that looked normal from the outside. He went to work, met friends for coffee, smiled when he needed to. But deep down, there was still a quiet ache, not as sharp as before, just heavy, like an echo that refused to fade. The apartment felt bigger without Emily. Her things were gone. The photos had been boxed up and the walls were bare. Yet somehow traces of her lingered everywhere, in the smell of old books, in the soft dent on the couch where she used to sit, in the way the morning light fell across the floor just the way she liked. Noah had learned to live with it, to breathe through it. Some days he missed her fiercely. Other days he was grateful for the distance. Healing, he realized, wasn't a straight path. It twisted, stalled, and sometimes went backward before moving forward again. One Saturday morning, while he was out running errands, he ran into Daniel. It was at a bookstore downtown, the same one Noah and Emily used to visit on rainy days. For a moment, both men froze, unsure whether to speak or walk away. Daniel looked older, worn, his eyes carrying the same tiredness Noah saw in his own reflection months ago. "Noah," he said finally, his voice low. Noah nodded once. "Daniel." An awkward pause hung between them, not angry, not hostile, just uncomfortable. Two men, bound by something neither wanted to remember. "I didn't think I'd see you again." Daniel said quietly. "I didn't plan to," Noah replied. Life has a strange sense of timing. Daniel gave a faint, regretful smile. "How are you?" Noah hesitated, then said, "Better than before." "Not great, but better." "That's something," Daniel said. "I guess that's all any of us can hope for." There was another pause. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel said, "I'm sorry, Noah. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. What I did was wrong. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Noah looked at him carefully. There was no arrogance in Daniel's tone, only remorse. He nodded. "You did," he said honestly. "But I've spent enough time being angry. I'm done carrying that." Daniel looked down, visibly relieved. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "But thank you for saying that." Noah took a deep breath, glancing at the books around them. Stories of heartbreak, redemption, hope. "We all make mistakes," he said softly. "But the real punishment isn't what happens after. It's knowing you can't undo it." Daniel nodded, his eyes misty. "Yeah, you're right about that." For a moment, they stood in silence, two men who once shared a room heavy with tension. Now standing in a bookstore surrounded by quiet peace. Life had moved on, even if their memories hadn't. Before leaving, Noah added, "I hope you found some peace too, Daniel. We both deserve at least that." Daniel smiled faintly. "I'm trying." They parted ways without anger, without bitterness, just two broken chapters finally closing that evening. Noah found himself walking by the lake again. It was fall now, the air crisp, the trees painted in shades of amber and gold. The water shimmered under the fading light, and for the first time, he didn't feel like running from the memories it held. He sat on the bench they used to share, closed his eyes, and listened to the sound of the wind brushing through the leaves. Everything felt different, but also strangely peaceful. Pain had given way to acceptance. A quieter kind of strength he thought about Emily, about how love sometimes isn't enough to keep people together, but it still shapes them forever. He hadn't heard from her since she left the note months ago. He knew she'd moved out of the city, started a new job somewhere near Portland. He didn't know much else, and maybe that was for the best. Some endings didn't need updates. They just needed distance. But fate, as always, had its own plans. A week later, while leaving a cafe downtown, Noah saw her, Emily, standing across the street, holding a takeaway coffee, her hair slightly shorter, her eyes the same, soft but distant. For a moment, neither moved. The noise of the city blurred around them, but all Noah could see was her. She noticed him too. A small, surprised smile appeared on her lips. She crossed the street slowly, hesitantly. "Noah," she said softly. "Hey," he replied. They stood there, awkward but calm. It wasn't the same tension as before. It was gentler, older, shaped by time. "You look good," she said. "So do you," he replied. "Portland suits you." She nodded. "It's quieter. I needed that." "I figured," he said. They both laughed softly, a shared understanding in their eyes. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," Emily admitted. "Life's funny that way," Noah said, echoing his own words to Daniel. She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I've thought about you a lot," she said. "Not to ask for anything, just to remember what I lost." He smiled faintly. "We both lost something," yes, she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But we also learned something. About love. About forgiveness." He nodded. "And about pain." Emily's eyes glistened. "Do you still hate me?" Noah shook his head gently. "No, I stopped hating you when I realized I couldn't heal if I kept carrying that. Hate keeps you tied to the past. I wanted to move forward." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. "You always had the kinder heart." "No," he said. "I just learned to let go." They stood there quietly for a moment, letting the noise of the city fill the space between them. There was no need for long explanations. Everything that needed to be said had already been lived. Finally, Emily said, "I'm happy you're okay." "Noah, I'm happy you are too," he replied. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you think we'll ever talk again?" He smiled gently. "Maybe, when it doesn't hurt anymore." She nodded, understanding. "Then I'll wait for that day." And with that, she turned and walked away. No dramatic goodbye, no tears. Just a quiet end to a story that once burned too bright. That night, Noah returned home and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars caught between glass and sky. He realized something: love doesn't always end with someone walking away. Sometimes it ends when you find peace in their absence. He picked up a notebook and started to write, something he hadn't done in years. Not a letter, not a confession, just thoughts. About life, about forgiveness, about how sometimes two people can destroy each other and still be grateful for what they shared. He wrote until midnight, the words flowing easily now. When he finally closed the notebook, he felt lighter. The past no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a lesson. A few weeks later, Noah decided to sell the apartment and move closer to the lake. Not to escape, but to start fresh. On his last day there, as he stood in the empty living room, he whispered a quiet thank you to the walls that had witnessed everything: love, betrayal, heartbreak, and growth. When he walked out for the last time, he didn't look back. A year later, Noah was standing by the lake again, camera in hand, taking photos of the sunset. The world had changed in subtle ways. The pain softer now, replaced by purpose. He'd started teaching photography classes at a local community center, helping others see beauty even in broken things. One evening, while reviewing photos with his students, he found himself saying something that made them pause. "Sometimes the best pictures aren't perfect," he said. "They're the ones taken when the light is fading, when you think it's too late, but you still press the button. That's life. You just keep pressing the button." The class smiled, not knowing how much truth hid behind his words. That night, as Noah walked home, the stars reflected in the lake. He thought of Emily one last time, not with sadness, but with quiet gratitude. She had been a chapter, not the whole story. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel broken. He just felt human.